everyone, and welcome to Muse Lessons from out of nowhere. I have taken the last couple of days off just to deal with home stuff and mental health, and was kind of, feeling better, but still a little tired today when I decided, what would be fun and energizing would be to talk about some myth, which we've not done in a little while. Hello, Sapphire, Ghost Trio, Natasha, Daniel, Maverick, Jeff, Dawn, Nacho, hello. Xavier, everyone, thanks for joining us. Hello, Leon. So what we're discussing today is Greek mythology, specifically the Theogony, which is a generic term that means creation of the gods. Hesiod's Theogony is the main source that we have discussing the creation of the Greek gods and their idea of the creation of the universe. There were probably many more other versions of the creation of the universe and the gods, but this is the only one that still survives. We see little mentions of them elsewhere, like some other ancient poet will say, and so the blah 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 created this, and it differs from what Hesiod says. But because it's just kind of a throwaway line, we really don't know what those other stories were. So Hesiod is the main source for where the gods came from, the genealogy, who begat who, and how the universe was created. And we're going to discuss how he presents it. Very little differs from probably what you've heard if you know Greek myth. Some of the genealogy and the families will change a little bit depending on who's telling which story, but most of what's in the Theogony is kind of the canon as far as we can tell. Now, Hesiod himself, like many ancient Greek poets, we really don't know a lot about him other than what is presented in his poetry, which means separating fact from fiction is very hard because there's not really any real records or biographies of the guy. He was an ancient shepherd poet that wrote about the gods. He had two major works, this being probably the most major as far as we know. The work is heavily influenced by other cultures, of course. One of the big influences is the Enuma Elish, which is the Sumerian story depicting the creation of the world and the gods. Both these stories have a younger generation of gods rising up to fight their parents and the older generation of gods and kind of supplanting them. There's also a Hurrian story. I don't know as much about where that one comes from, but it's Middle Eastern, that has a lot of similar ideas, a lot of the same kind of being born in eternal darkness and chaos being the source of everything. A lot of things like that. A lot of similar tropes and characters and gods. What changes is kind of who's married to who and who exactly rises up and wins over everybody. Whatever I've learned about Greek mythology, I've learned from Percy Jackson. I think that's true for a lot of folks, and a lot of characters and things have definitely been drawn from Hesiod's Theogony. To give y'all an idea of what it sounds like to read, I'll read the intro where he speaks about the Muses and what his whole thing's going to be. Let us begin to sing of the Muses of Helicon, who hold the great and holy mount of Helicon, and dance on tender feet round the violet spring, and the altar of Cronos' mighty son, having washed their soft skin in Permessos spring, or Hippocrane, or holy Olemos. On Helicon's summit they lead the fair and beautiful dances with rapid steps. Setting out from there, concealed by air, they walk at night, chanting their fair song, singing of Zeus, Aegeoch, and Mistress Hera of Argos, who walks in golden sandals, and Zeus, Aegeocho, daughter, allied Athena, and Phoebos Apollo, and Archeress Artemis, and Poseidon, earth embracer, earth shaker, and revered Themis, and glancing Aphrodite, and gold-crowned Hebe, and lovely Dione, Leto, Aepatos, crafty Cronos, Eos, great Helios, and bright Selene, Gaia, great Okeanos, and black Nyx, and the holy race of other immortals who always are. Quite a few of the pages of this book are literally just lists of names. Some of these people had 40 children. The guy that had the most was Okeanos, who had 6,000 combined children because he is the ocean and he is the father of all the rivers of the world and all of the nymphs, of which there were 3,000 each. So it starts explaining, I sing to the muses, because that's how you always had to shout out to the muses, and then he kind of develops a combination of a genealogy and a history of where everything came from. He'll stop at certain points in the story to say, oh yeah, there was this other guy who gave birth to so-and-so and was married to so-and-so, and then they'll continue the tale. Chaos is one of 4 of the original sources of being, not just chaos itself, but 4 kind of spontaneous gods just kind of exist suddenly. Chaos is one, Gaia, the earth, is another, Tartarus, the underworld, is the third, and Eros is the last, it's desire. Eros isn't always depicted as one of the primordial gods, but Hesiod does so. Chaos isn't exactly like chaos, like chaotic, kind of what we think of. It comes from a word in Greek that means like a void, like endless darkness. Kind of think of it like a womb of darkness. And Chaos will have a lot of children. Specifically, well, she'll have a lot of grandchildren. Nyx and Erebus, which are night and darkness, will come from Chaos. Spontaneously, once again. There's no actual, having procreation involved. Gaia will have Ouranos, which is the sky. And Tartarus really doesn't do much of anything other than just kind of hang out and exist. And then last Eros shows up, and once Eros, the embodiment of desire, shows up, people start having sex and getting down. Before that, there was no idea of sex as a way to have children. And that's kind of Hesiod's idea, his way of explaining, I guess, why the early gods just kind of pop and just kind of exist, because sexual procreation hadn't been invented yet. Aw, thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for the support. All right, let me grab my notes over here. Okay, so those 4 come into being. They have a couple of children, magically, and then Eros shows up, teaches them how to bone down, and then they start to do that. Ouranos, who was actually Gaia's son, the sky, starts to have some fun times with Gaia, which happens a lot in mythology, especially in Greek mythology. The likelihood here is that it probably stems from other mythologies that involve the sky and the god of the earth being the source of life. It's usually either like the sky and the earth, or the earth and the sea are seen as the primordial, before everything else, the source of everything, which makes sense. Well, Ouranos gets on with Gaia and has many children called the Titans. Kronos is the most important of them. Unfortunately, they are not allowed out of Gaia. They are trapped inside a dark pit of Gaia, is how Hesiod puts it, and will not let them out. And they are not happy about that. Gaia specifically is not happy because it's painful to have all these children trapped in her. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you guys for the warm welcome. They are trapped in her insides, and she doesn't like it, and it's kind of, the reading between the lines, it's kind of implied that they are literally being born and trapped inside of her womb by Ouranos constantly having sex with her because he's still inside her. So to escape, Gaia gives her brave son Kronos, the one that volunteers to help out, a sickle, which is used in Greek myth to fight monsters all the time. Everybody gets a sickle. To cut off Dad's dick. So, dad-brother, actually. The theory is that he didn't want his siblings to usurp him since he had come up with the idea of, getting with Gaia. He didn't want anybody else doing it. Well, they cut off his dick, and it falls into the ocean. And from it come a great other many gods. The Furies, the Erinyes, come from the blood of the penis. That is the 3 figures, Electra, or Electa, I can't remember which one it is. There's a couple of people named Electra. Tisiphone and Megara, who are the 3 Furies that punish the evildoers of the world. They come from the dick. It lands in the water and mixes up with the sea foam, and from that we see Aphrodite rise out of the ocean. And with her comes Hermenos, I believe. Let me see if that's the name. Himeros. Himeros is longing. Sometimes he's the son of Aphrodite. In Hesiod, he just kind of appears. Aphrodite rises out of the sea, and Himeros, the god of longing, comes with her as her attendant. And Eros also shows up and kind of from that point on is subordinate to her, even though in this story he is the primordial god of desire. Aphrodite shows up and he's like, nope, it's her scene now. I'm not important. The two of them become kind of her helpers and eventually her sons instead of coming before her. What's with the incest? Well, for one, it has a lot to do with if you're doing a creation story and imagining that all these characters come from some, out of nowhere, and it's one big family. Well, inevitably, if they're all that exists, that's the only characters you have to write with each other. And I don't know that it was always necessarily as taboo. In especially Greek and Roman culture, it wasn't quite as taboo. Marrying your cousin was pretty normal. I don't know that they entirely had gotten around to thinking that was gross. And it wasn't as big of an issue, really. But then the Greeks, they explored a lot of things in their mythology that we would look at and be disgusted by. Because they were far more wild about all these things. I don't know enough about their social, political situation there to say for sure why these things were so prominent. They just were part of a lot of their myths. Let's see here. I actually forgot to set up the cat cam, of course. Let me grab it. Oh, wow, it is open. Here, I close, and I move it over here. Oh, thank you, Maddie. And I haven't updated the frickin' list yet, but thank you for becoming a member and supporting the channel. Please get your bonuses in the link in the description. Let me get the kitties. Kitties! Let's see here. Hello! Can we see you? I can see you. The camera can't get very close today. They're taking a nap. And it fell. I need to find a better place to plug it in. Unfortunately, my new setup, I have it attached to a cord that lengthens it, but it's still not quite long enough to reach when the kitties sleep over there. Aw, thank you, Maddie. I'm so glad you enjoy it. They didn't have concept of genetics and genetic abnormalities. Yeah, well, I feel like that kind of thing was sort of known. Like, they didn't know why it happened, but I know historically the idea of inbreeding to a certain extent was known because you could see the effects of it. But I don't know how much that really affected them or what they thought about it. I would have to look into it more, which I've been reading up on it. I'm reading Ovid, which is really fun. We may discuss that this week. I'm going to just pull the camera over here. See if I can aim it again. We can kind of see him. Lazy bums. Alright, I was discussing Aphrodite, I believe. You stay. Seriously, there's kitties. Okay. So, they cut off the Sky's penis, and Ouranos is born. Or not Ouranos, he was Ouranos. All these other characters are born from the blood. But he still sticks around. Like, he's defeated. Kronos is now top god. But Ouranos, the sky, is not destroyed, just emasculated. He'll hang around and be a part of some of the myths, but he's not the bad, big bad guy anymore. So, Kronos takes his sister Rhea as his partner. There's 12 titans that involve various figures who, other than Kronos, are mostly just kind of background characters. You might hear them mentioned as, the parents of such and such figure that shows up later. Most of the titans aren't that important. But Kronos and Rhea will give birth to 6 children: Hestia, Hera, Demeter, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, who of course are the Olympian gods, though they aren't known as that yet. Unfortunately for them, Kronos takes after his dad in being not great. Kronos is going to decide that his children are a threat to his power. So when they're born, he eats them. Which actually also, we were discussing earlier how these stories reflect Middle Eastern stories and farther east stories. This is very similar to a myth called the Kingship in Heaven from Hurrian myth, where the god Anu, I believe, is involved, and a guy named Kumarbi. There's this guy that eats some gods, and anyway, there's some ideas there that are similar, so it feels like maybe this myth has been adapted from other cultures. So Ouranos eats his kids. There's variations here on how they get out, but ultimately the most popular version is Rhea manages to sneak away and give birth to Zeus in secret in a cave. Another story that comes from other myths, the god born in the cave. Hides him there for a year without daddy knowing. She gives him a rock to eat instead of baby Zeus. And when a year has passed, he's all risen up and powerful, and he comes to beat up dad and save his siblings. Let's see here. Yep, so they are fighting. They're going to have a big war. So he comes to fight Kronos. Say, hey, leave my siblings, let them go. He throws them all up, but that's not the end of it. They have this big war. Some of the Titans side with the Olympians, some of them don't. What happens is the Olympian gods set up their war camp on Mount Olympus, and that's how they come to be known as the Olympians. The Mountain Olympus is a mountain next to a valley, and there's another mountain over on the other side, and there's this theory that maybe the Titans were on the other side of the mountain. So they fight for 10 years, which is a number that shows up in mythology in Greece quite a lot. The Trojan War was also 10 years. There's a lot of stuff that happens for 10 years. They fight for 10 years, and then Gaia, I believe, or Rhea, one of the two, has a prophecy that says, hey, the Olympians aren't going to win this war unless you get the 100-handed ones. The 100-handed ones were 3 dudes, Boreas, Gygus, and one other dude. What was that dude's name? They were children of Gaia, or Rhea. Let me make sure. Yes, children of Gaia, along with the Cyclopses, of which there are 3 named here, Brontes, Steropes, and Arges, and they were imprisoned by Kronos at one point. So Zeus hears this prophecy that they need the 100-handed folks to end this war, and so he goes and sets them free from Tartarus. They say, hey, thanks for doing that, we're very grateful, and they throw 300 rocks, because they have all these 100 hands, and there's 3 of them. They throw 300 rocks, they bury the evil Titans, including Gaia, who grandma was on the side of the Titans, and the Olympians win, and so, yay, now they are in charge of everything. Zeus is king, and the good Titans that joined them get to hang out and be cool too. One of them is Styx, a female goddess who is the embodiment of the river Styx. In reward for her assistance, the gods start to swear by the river Styx. They give her this really great importance, where if they swear by the river Styx, then they are held to that no matter what. They have to go through whatever it is they promised. He takes a moment here. Like I said, he often stops in the middle of stories to just read genealogies. He stops here to explain that Nyx, or Night, has a bunch of children. Nyx bore hateful Moros and black Care and Thanatos. She bore Hypnos and the tribe of Oneiroi. Next Momos and painful Oises were born to the dark goddess Nyx, though she lay with no one, and the Hesperides, who keep beyond famous Okeanos the beautiful golden apples and the fruit-bearing trees. And she bore the Morae and the pitiless Ceres, Clotho and Lachesis and Atropos, who give to mortals at birth good and evil to have, who pursue the sins of men and gods. The goddesses never end their terrible anger until they inflict evil on anyone who sins. And deadly Nyx bore Nemesis, a plague to mortal men. After her she bore Apate and Philotes, and painful Gyrus and hard-hearted Eris. So, the various things here are all embodiments of specific kind of feelings or experiences. Death is Thanatos, Hypnos is sleep, Care is destiny, Oasis is pain. The theory being, and it seems to be true, almost all of these are things that are associated with nighttime, like sleep, death were kind of associated with nighttime. One of these is, I believe, love was associated with nighttime. And then other ones are associated with darkness in general, like we associate them with being dark and evil, like pain and Garros, who's old age. So anything that was essentially considered something you do at night or something that is bad was the child of Nyx. Not all of them were Nyx's. Eris, Nyx's daughter, also had something like 15 children, who also were bad things or things that happened at night. And hateful Eris, who's, I believe, Discord, hateful Eris bore painful Ponos, Leth and Limos, and the tearful Algia, Hymsminai, Machai, Phonoi, and Androkastai, Nekia, Sueda, Logoi, and Amphiliogai, Dysnomia, and Ate, near one another, and Horkos, whom most afflicts men on earth, than anyone willingly swears a false oath. And then they go on to another god. Horkos is oath, but in the sense of he's the one that punishes you if you break an oath. All of these are various kind of punishments or crimes, like Androkastai is manslaughter. I believe Logoi is actually story, which might be associated with like the telling of stories at night. I'm not sure exactly how that one's connected to nighttime and sleepy time. Hey, Schneiderline, welcome. Let's see here. So he goes on then to talk about Pontos. Pontos is the sea. You may be confused because there's also Okeanos, who's the ocean. Now, they kind of divided up bodies of water. Ocean is a river to them. They see it as a river that circles the entire world. So the sea would have been the small body of water that they could cross to get to like Egypt and the Middle East. So it was bigger than a river, but not necessarily circling the entire world. Pontos is the sea. Okeanos is the ocean. So Pontos gives birth, or has, Nerus, the old man of the sea, who appears in a lot of different myths. There's like 4 or 5 different embodiments of ocean and sea gods here, kind of implying that a lot of them probably were fused from other cultures and really prominent and just kind of became different embodiments of the ocean, but probably not all of them were Greek in origin. Nerus, the old man in the sea, gives birth to, or has as a father. He fathers a lot of rivers. There's quite a few named here. They go on to explain that Okeanos has Iris, the rainbow, who becomes the messenger of the gods. The idea that the rainbow kind of connects from the sky to the earth. The Harpies, Elo and Okipet, who embody like violent death by like wind or storms. They keep going on with more births. Cato bore to Phorcys, who I believe it says here, I think those two might be nymphs. He goes through, oh yes, Horcus was, nope, this is with a P, not an H. This is another dude. Oh, here we go. Child of Pontos, so child of the sea. These are more sea children. They give birth to the gray women, the gray eye. Pemphrido and Enyo. He only actually names 2, but almost every other mythology and writer will name 3 gray women. Those are the women that have one eyeball among them, but they have all this like knowledge that they can share with you, and I believe most prominently Perseus goes to them for information, I believe. And the Gorgons, who are Steno, Uriel, and Medusa. Medusa being the only one that's not immortal. And Medusa has some children with Poseidon in a really weird way. They take a moment here to step aside and kind of talk about the myth of Perseus, who's the hero that kills Medusa. But the reason Medusa's turned into a monster is because she and Poseidon have some fun times in a temple, I believe to Athena, and the goddess didn't like that, so she turned Medusa into a monster. Oh, thank you for the support, Mary. I am definitely buying Medium day 1. It looks like so much fun, and we're going to definitely stream it this Thursday, right? I'm excited. That'll be fun. So, Medusa and Poseidon have some fun. It goes badly for Medusa. Well, when Perseus cuts off her head, 2 children jump out of her neck, both of whom are said to be the children of Poseidon. So I guess they were just chilling for a couple years there after she and Poseidon got down. One of them is Chrysaor, who was born with a, I believe, golden sword in his hand. and Pegasus, the flying horse. Horses and the ocean gods, Poseidon, are heavily associated with each other. They were kind of seen as going hand in hand, possibly because Poseidon wasn't originally an ocean god. He was probably a more of a earthquake and horse god that when the Greeks started moving south and they came across the ocean/sea and saw how big it was, they were like, well, that's awesome. We got to give a good god to that. And they picked Poseidon because he's the brother of their big god. Let's see here. It goes on to explain Chrysaor gives, he fathers Geryon Nous, who is a mild figure in the myths. He appears in Hercules' story. What's fun about him is he's 3 dudes in 1 dude. Not 3 heads, 3 bodies and 3 heads. Like, all 3 dudes fused together. They have, like, 1 unified torso and, like, 6 arms and 3 heads. They look funky. And I believe he is killed by Hercules in his stories. Alright, so, more children being born. At this point, he goes into how some monsters are born. Hello, Chrysamity. Thanks for joining us, and everyone else who's joined. Let's see who is the parent. It just says she. Let's see. It says they don't know who she is. So, here it describes some people, somebody, giving birth to some monsters. First is Echidna, who is like a half woman, half snake. And then Echidna will get down with Typhon, who is a titan, I believe. And we'll have 4 more monsters. Cerberus, the 3-headed dog. Hydra, the snake with the many, many heads. Chimera, which is, I believe, a 2-headed kind of lion creature with a snake tail. And a serpent. It's a giant serpent is all it is. So a bunch of monsters, essentially trying to explain where some of these big mythical creatures come from that will feature in stories later. And let's see here. They give birth. All these monsters show up. Explains all those. Kind of gives those stories a little bit of a brief overview. And now we're back to rivers. Okeanos, the ocean, is the father of 3,000 rivers. They name tons of them, and all of them kind of have, we theorize for the most part, real-world connections. Like there was a goddess, or probably really a goddess, of every river. Nilus, Nilus, was the Nile, one of the more famous ones. Most of them really don't feature in the stories, other than maybe as like the mom of some hero or somebody. Alright. Then, after the rivers, we get to the discussion of the winds. Now, the winds are the children of Eurybia and Astrios, who also, Astrios being like an astral god, gives birth, he's the father of the stars as well as the winds. There are 4 main winds: Zephyros, Boreas, Notos, and Eos. He doesn't actually name Eos in here, but they are the winds of the north, east, south, and west. And each one kind of had its own personality, and they were associated with the seasons in a little bit of a way. They had these ideas like the north wind was cold, and the east wind was moist, and that kind of thing. But there were even more winds than that. There was like a wind for the southeast and a wind for the south-southeast. There's something like 12 or 13 of them. He only names 3 of the biggest ones here. Let's see. Then they get to a Regina giving birth to Osphoros and all the stars, and then Styx lays down with Pallas and bears Nike, who is victory, Kratos, who is power. You maybe didn't know that Kratos from God of War was named for an actual figure in mythology. Well, he was. His sibling Bia, who I believe is force. They keep going on with more and more people being born, many of whom are just like throwaway names in other mythologies, but because they do exist somewhere, you know, Hesiod wants to account for where they came from, and he goes through almost every, like, not every mythical figure, but a lot of them. Let's see if there's any more standouts. So, at the end of that, it jumps back into the story of the war, and Styx, the river Styx, being thanked for her role in turning on the Titans and helping Zeus win. He gives her great honor, and everybody's given all these great powers, and some new gods are born. Specifically, Phoebe and Koios, some titans, give birth to Leto, who will feature in mythology as the mother of Apollo and Artemis, who are the children of Zeus in another myth. He doesn't really go into their birth quite yet, because that won't happen for a little while, but this is explaining Leto. She also gave birth to Asteria, and then Hecate, who is incredibly important. And unlike so many, he's gone through births of like so-and-so, and then so-and-so, and then so-and-so, giving each character like maybe half a sentence. But with Hecate, he's going to go on far longer, because she is the goddess of magic and one of the most important folk characters in their traditions. There's always kind of the difference between what the philosophers and what the writers see as the most important parts or most important gods aspects of religion, as compared to what the actual people do, who the actual people care about. Hecate was one of the ones that the actual people out and about cared about, because you could pray to her, you could ask her for help in taking care of your animals, cast a spell to get a wife, anything, because she's the goddess of magic. You can ask or try to cast a spell for almost anything. And so he goes on and on about Hecate. Let's see here. For even now, whenever someone of men on earth sacrifices fine things and prays in due ritual, he invokes Hecate. Much honor comes to him very easily, whose prayers the goddess favorably receives. And she grants him wealth, since this is her power. For as many were born of Gaia and Ouranos and obtained honor, among them all she has her due. Cronos' son neither wronged her nor took her away when she received among the Titans, the former gods, but this she keeps as was the division at the beginning. Nor, since she is an only child, does the goddess obtain less honor and privileges on earth and sky and sea, but rather she has still more, for Zeus honors her. Greatly she assists and benefits whom she will. She sits by reverent kings in judgment, and he is eminent among the people in assembly, whom she wishes. Whenever men arm for man-killing war, then the goddess is there, and to whom she wishes she gladly grants victory and extends glory. She is good to stand by cavalry, by whom she wishes. She is also good when men compete in the contest. Then also the goddess assists and benefits them. One who wins by might and strength bears off the fine prize easily and happily, and brings glory to his parents. To those who work the grey sea's discomfort and pray to Hecate and loud-sounding earth-shaker, the noble goddess easily grants much catch, and easily takes it back when it appears if her heart wishes. She is good with Hermes to increase the stock in barns, herds of cattle and wide herds of goats, and flocks of woolly sheep, if her spirit wishes. She increases from few, and from many makes less. So even though, being her mother's only child, she is honored with privileges among all the immortals. That was a page and a half, after something like 40 different gods got half a sentence each. There's a theory that this book kind of explains a little bit, that possibly Hesiod's dad might have been part of a Hecate cult, or a tradition of focusing in on Hecate as a main figure, which might be why he affords her so much love and support here, where she gets so much attention and so many others don't. Hey, Akatsuki. So, after discussing how awesome Hecate is for a minute, we go back to other people being born. First we have to talk about how she's the guardian of the children. She apparently is, she does everything. Then, more children are born. Finally, we're discussing Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus being born. Now again, that seems really weird because he's jumping back and forth between the genealogy bit and the history bit where Zeus and them already exist, but it's because he's kind of explaining the genealogy as characters show up. So, like, during the war, when Rhea shows up, he goes, oh, wait a minute, these were Rhea's kids, and then explains who they are. Alrighty. So, we're doing the war. We win the war. After the war, they bind a bunch of the people that turned on them. specifically, Titans that didn't side with them and all that, put them in Tartarus, which is the deepest pit of the underworld, the darkness. And then they get back to having children. Atlas is born, who is the one that holds up the world. Prometheus, Epithemus, and Menoitos, who are all pretty big people. I don't know. They're Titans, I suppose, though they're not the first generation. It's kind of implied Atlas holds the world on his shoulders for a punishment, but Hesiod doesn't say what the punishment is. He also doesn't explain really Prometheus's whole sending the fire down thing just yet, but he will build to it because obviously that's like how society is created. But first, he will discuss the first woman. In Greek tradition, there are these different eras of history, which he doesn't actually really explain a lot of, but there's this idea that before our common human existence right now, there were other ages where humans lived in immortality. The Golden Age, where humans were immortal, the gods walked among us, and at this point, that is when they are going to make the first woman, named Pandora. Pandora will actually be created by Hephaestus, I believe, and Prometheus will fashion together part of it, I believe. But first they're going to show how Zeus gets angry at some people and throws some people into prison. And then they go back to talking about the creation of a modest virgin. Owl-eyed Athena sashed her and dressed her in silver clothes. She placed with her hands a decorated veil on her head, marvelous to see. And lovely fresh garlands, the flowers of plants, Pallas Athene put around her head. And she placed on her head a golden crown, which the famous lame one had made himself, shaping it with his hands to please Father Zeus. On it he carved many designs, a marvelous sight, of all dread beasts the land and sea nourish. He included most amazingly similar to living animals with voices, and beauty breathed over all. He's gonna go on to talk about how women are evil and marriage is bad. 'Cause, oh boy. Yeah, he goes on a bit of a diatribe here about how you should not get married because women are just a parasite. But his version of Pandora, essentially, Pandora is the first woman created to be kind of a partner to them, and then in her ignorance accidentally opens, of course, the jar that has all of the terrible things in the world, and she manages to close it before hope gets out. In his story, she does it on purpose because she's evil, because ladies suck. A lot of, especially like this kind of class of people, wrote about women as parasites because women couldn't generate their own wealth. They had no way of, they just lived off of the male family members because that's how the society was designed, and somehow that was the woman's fault. But anyway, so after they deal with what happened with Pandora, they jump back to locking up the prisoners like the various ugly monsters, the many-handed folks. I remember another story where Pandora was a punishment to men by Zeus. Yeah, well, it was definitely an era where Athens was founded by incels. Yeah. It was an era that had a lot of a big development and changes, and whenever you see that, you're going to see things that push back, and especially since so few things survive from the time, we really will never know at certain points how much freedom or how welcoming or different these various cultures were. For instance, we all think of Sparta as just this, big violent war place because all we really have surviving of them is what Athens wrote about them, and Athens didn't like Sparta. All we know about the island of Lesbos is basically what few fragments remain from Sapphos's poetry. There's theories that it was a really lovely place for women to live because of how she wrote and various implications in other writing, but we don't know because so much didn't survive. So there's a lot of various societal things and changes from Greek myth and Greek stories that we can't be entirely sure what life was like back then. We can only kind of guess. Let's see here. So, the war is finally over. Zeus is making his speech, saying, "Hey guys, we won. Hear me, good children of Gaia and Ouranos, that I may say what the spirit in my chest commands. For For a long time now, against one another, we fought every day for victory and power, the Titan gods and we born of Kronos. Show your great strength and unbeatable arms against the Titans in savage war. Remember our kindness and how much you suffered before you came to the light from grievous bondage. Excuse me. So, again, we discussed earlier how he gets those 3 dudes out of prison. Well, they throw the rocks. They win. Yay. It's over. And they get to talking again about kind of just general cosmology stuff. Now that the war is over, he describes how Tartarus is where these guys were imprisoned and that it's part of the underworld, and kind of lays out a little bit of what the underworld is, kind of how it's designed. In front, the son of Ippitos holds the wide sky with his head and untiring arms standing immobile, where Nyx and Hemera come near and address one another, passing the great threshold of bronze. One will go down, the other comes from the door, and the house never holds both within, but always one is out of the house and traverses the earth, while the other is in the house and awaits the time of her journey when it will come. Nyx is night, Hemera is day. So the two of them, there's this great bronze door in front of the underworld. Atlas is holding up the earth from down there. I guess because there's this idea that it's like a flat plate and the underworld is under the earth. So Atlas is in the underworld holding everything up, rather than like we see that sphere on his shoulder. That's not how they really would have seen it. And through the gate, night and day pass each other, kind of saying, oh, hey, hello. And they never are together underground. Probably no video games today. I honestly was not feeling it, and I felt like this might be better for me today. I don't think I can shoot things and not get lost and play well. Hopefully tomorrow. Maybe P5R. Maybe Fear and Persona will be our focus until Medium comes out on Thursday. Let's see here. So he continues to explain, now that he's got the chance, the underworld, and specifically where all these dark gods live. The children of Dark Nyx have their homes, Hypnos and Thanatos, awful gods. Never does shining Helios look on them with his beams as he goes up to the sky or comes down from the sky. Hypnos and Thanatos are two of the most popular of the kind of chthonic underground gods that are children of Nyx. They are sleep and death. They are twins. And he's saying here that the sun never sees them. Kind of saying that sleep and death are darkness things. They are nighttime activities. Then he goes on to explain Cerberus standing in front of the house. He has an evil trick. On those going in, he fawns with his tail in both ears, but does not let them go back out, and waiting, eats whomever he catches going out of the doors. So he does cute puppy eyes when you're walking in, and if you try to walk out, he eats you. They describe the river Styx, the goddess. Whenever conflict and strife arise among the immortals and one of those who have Olympian homes should lie, Zeus sends Iris to bring the gods great oath from afar in a golden pitcher, the famous cold water which trickles down from a high, steep rock. Far below the wide-pathed earth it flows from the holy river through black night. A branch of Okeanos, a 10th part is allotted to it. So, this is getting a little in the weeds, but there is this idea that you swear on the river Styx when you're making a promise, and you can't break that promise, because if you're a god, it would go bad for you. In this story, he says that Iris actually takes some of the water from the river Styx and makes them swear over it. And there's this idea that they maybe would have done this like as a way to prove lies, where you would take the water to the god and say, okay, swear you didn't do such and such. And they would have to swear, and if they had lied, they would have been punished. And the punishment was the god ends up being sick for a great year. Another harsher ordeal succeeds the first. For 9 years he is parted from the gods, who always are, and never joins in council and feast for 9 full years. In the 10th he rejoins the meetings of the immortals. Again, this focus on 10 years. This idea of being punished for swearing on the Styx and breaking the oath never comes up. Never happens in any of the mythologies or stories that we have. It's just something that he describes as a possible punishment that doesn't seem to be in any of the myths. Alright. So, we have, again, some depictions of some gods being born. Typhon is the last of the Titans to be born, with Gaia and Ouranos after the war. And, of course, Aphrodite was born at this point. Gaia is really upset that they all fought her children, the Titans. She's grandma of the Olympians and doesn't like that the Titans were fought and killed. But she tries to attack them. You know, she's the Earth, so there's earthquakes and storms, and Zeus and the gang rise up to fight her and throw down all these weapons, thunder and lightning. And this is the fight with the giants, because the giants are creatures that Earth, she gave birth to but kept inside her, kind of waiting until this moment when she needed people to fight on her side. She brought out the giants. This myth really reflects the Enuma Elish, which is a Sumerian story where the young god Marduk fights his grandmother Tiamat, the great horrible serpent that gave birth to everything in the early years, and has as children all these monsters that fight her. A lot of things are in common. Both stories involve the wind gods being on the side of the hero, helping to defeat the terrible mother creature. There's a lot of things in common, so it's probably likely that that's where this myth came from. Well, eventually Zeus wins, and from being at war, he has 7 wives. His first is Metis, who is one of the Titans, I believe. She is wisdom, and there's a prophecy told that she is going to have a child who's even wiser than Zeus. Zeus does not like that prophecy, so he decides to eat her. He eats Metis. And, well, as we all know, the myth of Athena has her popping out of his head. Well, first, she was in Metis and got eaten and just happened to kind of survive. I guess poor Metis just goes away now, just got ate and is gone. Well, oops. So he ate his first wife. The second one he marries is Themis, who gives birth to the Horai, Anomia, Dike, and Irene. The Horai are the spirits of the seasons. They aren't necessarily like summer, winter, and fall, more like kind of the good aspects of what you think of when there's like planting season. Dike is justice. Anomia, I believe, is like peace. They are the good feelings you have at like the height of spring when food is aplenty. Also, the Morai are the 3 fates. Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos are born to them. Then he gets with Eurynome, who is the daughter of the ocean, and then from them are the Graces born. Agalai, Euphrosyne, and lovely Thalia. The Graces are the embodiment of beauty and grace. They are 3 women that just embody all the lovely parts of femininity. After that, he gets with Demeter, and from Demeter he has Persephone. And then Mnemosyne, who is a Titan, is Memory, and he spends 9 lovely nights with Mnemosyne, and for each night, one of the Muses is born. Fun story, the Muses, the 9 Muses, that embody the spirits of the arts, they didn't probably have names before Hesiod named them. We're not entirely sure, but the way that the story's written here kind of implies that he came up with the names himself, and they weren't given individual kind of realms of creation until the Romans. The Romans, who love to categorize things and, you know, this is this and that is that, they gave each of the 9 muses a specific realm of creativity to rule over, like comedy or tragedy or mime. There's a muse of the mimes. Anyway, after Mnemosyne, Zeus gets with Leto, and that's when Apollo and Artemis are born. And after that, finally, he gets with Hera, which kind of goes against some of the mythologies, since there's some stories that say that Leto had to run away from Hera because Hera was jealous, so at that time they would have already been married. In his version, Hera came last, and from Hera came Hebe, Ares, and Ilthyia. Ares is the only one that really will be important. You'll hear about Hebe a little bit. You will never hear about Ilthyia. From that point, they move on to Poseidon, who marries Amphitrite. From Amphitrite is born Triton, who is the sea god, kind of just another god of the ocean. There's lots of them. Ares gets with gets with Aphrodite and has Phoebos and Deimos, who are like fear and panic, and Harmonia, who is harmony, funny enough. Maya gets with Zeus. Maya is one of the ancient titans, and they have Hermes. And then Zeus gets with Semele and has Dionysus. And they just keep going. And then Zeus gets with Alcmene and has Heracles. And then Hephaestus. It just names Hephaestus at the end there without really explaining much here. Hephaestus, according to tradition, is born from Hera by himself, the same way that Athena kind of pops out of Zeus's head. Story goes she was like jealous or angry that he popped out a kid, so she did one in spite of him. She's not a good mom or wife, really, because when she sees Hephaestus, she really doesn't like him and she throws him away. He's only rescued by, I believe, 2 river spirits who take care of him. For the most part, she really doesn't like any of her kids, and she just likes to torture her husband for, understandably, for getting around, but she doesn't seem that fun. And they keep going on with more people. Dionysus gets with Ariadne. They explain Heracles a little bit and what he does. Helios gets a wife and has a kid. They keep going on a little bit about who gets with who and who marries who. Demeter actually has another kid. They're not heard of a lot. Demeter and Persephone tend to be the focus, but Demeter actually does get with a human, a mortal man, a hero, Iason, in a thrice-plowed field, of course, and has a kid. Harmonia, daughter of golden Aphrodite, goes to Cados and has 4 or 5 kids who all appear in different myths. All of these are figures who are in other people's myths eventually, but don't really feature very heavily in this. Hello, goodest boy. I do lesson streams. It's been a little while since I've done one, so I'm not surprised you haven't seen them. But I hope to get back to that now. More famous children. Let's see here. What's this? Ooh. So, that's the end. That's all the famous children. I forgot it just ends with the children. He keeps going with other mythological, really obscure mythological figures. The Dawn, Eos, gets with a guy and has Memnon, Emethon, Patheon. There's a guy that gives birth, or has the daughter Aeetes, who shows up in another myth. They're like, none of these names are very famous, but back then they probably would have been known well enough and would have been recognized. The Old Man of the Sea has some daughters. The Thetis, who is a sea goddess, has Achilles by a human man. Aeneas is born to Aphrodite. Circe, daughter of the Hyperion Helios, in love with Odysseus, bore Agrios and Latinos. The divine goddess Calypso, joined to Odysseus in dear love, bore Nausithous and Nausinous. These are the immortals who went to bed with mortal men and bore children similar to gods. Now, sweet-voiced Olympian muses, daughters of Zeus, Aegichos, sing of the race of women. That is the end of the actual Theogony. The race of women, or the list of women, I believe, is his next work. And I think it's one of the only 2 works of his that we have. Let me pull up my spreadsheet. It's right there. Ta-da! I made a spreadsheet of all the children, all the people. It's still not got everybody in it, but it's got a lot of people, and I'll probably post a link to somewhere to this, but, I thought it was fun to try and imagine. This first line here, we've got our primordials, Chaos, Eros, Gaia, and Tartarus all the way at the bottom. Tartarus doesn't do nothing or have nobody. He just kind of becomes a place, you know. And then Chaos has Erebus, which is darkness, Nyx, which is night. Nyx has all these kids, and then Eris has all these other kids. Hemera is going to marry Ether, who's brightness, and have Thalassa, which is another goddess of the sea. How long did this take? Like 2 hours. I did this morning. Nyx and Erebus will actually have Aether and Hemera first, kind of in the similar kind of pattern where from Chaos comes the first 2 couple, and then they have 2 that become a couple, and then they have 2 who become a couple. Aether is brightness, Hemera is the day. They get together and have Thalassa. There are so many ocean and sea gods. It's kind of implied that they are probably fusions of many, many, many cultures. And also, the ocean is so changeable and so vast, it's not surprising to imagine that different parts of it might have different versions of the same gods. So then we get down here to Gaia. Gaia gets with Tartarus and has that guy Typhon. Herself, she has Oranos, which is the sky, and she has the Aurea, which are the mountains, and Pontos, which is the sea. Pontos gets married to Thassala, the goddess up there, and has a nymph named Halia, and all the fish in the ocean come from Thassala, poor Thassala, and the storm giants. Then she's got, with Oranos, her son, she has the Cyclops, the 100 Hands, all the Titans, and they are all listed here. The Titans are spread out because they all have their own wives and children. The most important one, of course, is going to be Kronos, who gets with Rhea and has the Olympians. And then the Olympians get with some folks and have a bunch of kids. Let's see, this one's Poseidon. Poseidon is the father of Theseus, Alias, Triton, Chemioplea, Belpharion, Rohodes, and 6 sons. Oh, no, wait, yes, it is. These are the different wives. Amphitrite is his wife, but he does get with some other figures in myth. Halia is a nymph. Arianome, I think, is a titan. Libya, I think, was a human. All these are kind of minor figures, some of whom are sometimes accounted to other people, but if they are mostly accounted to these people, I put them with the one they're kind of always put with. Here we go up here. Kreos, one of the titans, gets with Erebia. Star guy is born. He gets with the dawn, and the dawn and the sky have, or the dawn and the stars have all these children that are winds and the stars and everybody. Pallas is another ancient kind of titan figure, gets with the river Styx and has force and power and victory and envy and all these figures. Rhea is Demeter. Demeter has Aeson, which is Pluto, and then also has Persephone, who I apparently missed on my list. Or actually, maybe I listed her under Hades? Or not Hades, Zeus. That's who I listed her under. Zeus has the most, of course. Gets with Hercules. Gets with Jesus. Gets with Alcmene and has Hercules. Gets with Danae and has Persephone. Demeter, or Perseus. Demeter and Persephone. Europa has like 6 kids. Fun story, Minos and Rhadamanthus both become judges in the underworld. They were children of Zeus and a human, and end up, when they pass away, becoming judges of souls in the underworld, which seems awkward to me, since Minos is such a weirdo. He's the guy that dealt with the Minotaur and all that. What do I think of Hecate? I think she's really fascinating, and actually, you might want to jump back a little later. The book that we were reading from today has a whole section that just goes off on how awesome Hecate is that we read from. Ganymede is a male figure that Zeus gets with and steals away to become the cupbearer of the gods. There's a couple of male figure, Hyacinth and Apollo. Hyacinth was a human man that was caught in a love triangle between Zephyrus, which is one of the winds, and Apollo, god of the sun. Doesn't end well for him. There's another in here called Nekites. Where is he? Poseidon. Where's Poseidon? Poseidon also had one of these. Neretes. Poseidon and Neretes get together, and they don't feature a lot in the official myths, but in folklore, apparently, they were a really big duo, and Neretes is a dude. Apparently, he was like a minor ocean god, and was very popular when paired with Poseidon. Let's see, anybody else stand out here? Here. Ares and Aphrodite have Deimos, which is called Rout in some of these kind of myths. I've always heard of him as Panic, and Phobos as Fear. Harmonia, which is Harmony. In later stories, Cupid is the child of Aphrodite. Cupid being another version of Eros. Eros in this story, of course, is supposed to be a primordial god, but eventually the myths would involve, kind of subordinate him to Aphrodite because she was super popular. He was one of many winged kind of gods of love, various kinds of love. Another major one was Anteros, who's sometimes said to have been created to be like his partner because he was lonely. Anteros is requited love, like the fulfillment of love. And Anteros, Hermes, and Hercules were apparently part of a trio that were very heavily associated with homosexual love. Eros was also very associated, like all these love gods were very associated with that, but he happened to be one of the patrons of it. Let's see here. We got all the muses. Erato was assigned to lyric poetry by the Romans. Euterpe was music. Got epic poetry, history, tragedy, astronomy, mime, dance, and comedy. I guess mime was really big in Rome. I don't know about all that. Themis is the mother of the Morae and the Horae, which we talked about was the seasons and the fates. And then we get over here. Okeanos has 3,000 rivers and 3,000 nymphs. The major ones I named here, like Electra and Eurynome and Doris and Calypso, figures that appear in other stories. That's 6,000 children. That is so many children. I'm so sorry, Tethys. There's a theory that Tethys and Okeanos were probably the primordial gods in another tradition, either, somewhere else in Greece or another culture that we've lost the story because, again, this is the only version of Greek creation stories that we have left. Because they have a lot of things in common with primordial gods, and they had so many kids. That's a lot of kids. Let's see here. There's the Furies being created from the blood. Pontos, the sea, and his kids, the old man in the sea. He has Amphitrite, Galatea, and a bunch of other folks. They have some kids. This is the line that creates Achilles. Achilles is the son of a human and a goddess of the ocean, Thetis, who I believe was either, it depends on the myth, either she was assaulted or for some reason there was this prophecy that said that her child would be like the greatest among whoever, and so Zeus was like, you have got to get with a human because you cannot make a god that's cooler than me. So that's why that happened. What do I think about the Telchines? Are those the storm giants? I don't know as much about them, but I do know that they are in my list because like everything is in my list. I'm working on that. Let's see. I think that's really everybody so far. I'm sure there's still people missing from my list here because Greek mythology is huge, but I thought it would be fun to see if I could actually make sense of all the various connections and all the people that were related to each other 3 or 4 or 5 times. The game Immortal Phoenix Rising has Zeus kind of fanboy over Achilles. I think Hades does that too. I really do want to play Phoenix Rising, and I might give in and buy it because I need something to distract me. I'm definitely feeling the stay-at-home blues, but things are getting better. It's a new year. Thanks for your patience with me. I don't know what this week's going to look like, honestly, but I'm hoping it will be better than last week. I will try and maybe just do more of this. It's really been fun to discuss stuff with you. I got super lucky over the weekend. A guy on Facebook owns a bookstore and was trying to get rid of overstock and was getting rid of a bunch of books for free, and I went and got some like 30 or 40 books, including this one. So I'm very excited about all that. Thank you guys for watching and listening. And thanks for the support to everybody who donated and everybody that's a member, like Alexis and Daniel and who else was here today? Jeff. I know there was a new person here today. Are you still here? Let's see, Schneiderline and Leon was here. Mary donated, thank you. Maddie, that was the new person. Thanks you so much, guys. You were amazing and so fantastic. I don't know. I'll stream something tomorrow. I may just ramble more about mythology because I think that's what I'm up to. I don't know. Just playing games just seems like a lot. When you're like I'm not depressed. I'm just tired, I don't want to do things. But I can talk about stuff. That's fun. You gonna come visit? Hi. Can you say hi? Bobby. You say hi. No, stay right there. Here, I'll pet. I will pet the boy. I'll pet the boy if he just stays right here. Or how about I just grab this? Bob? Hello. Hello, Bob. Are you done? You're done. Okay. Well, thank you guys. Still working on my Silent Hill 2 book, editing it. It's about halfway done, so hopefully by the end of this month, I'll put it back on the store. The Silent Hill 1 book is up. Did I say Silent Hill 2 is the book I'm working on. Silent Hill 1 and 3 books are available, and digital, paperback, hardback, all that jazz. You can become a member if you like what I do and want to support it. Links are in the description. It really does help a lot to allow me to do what I do. I guess that's everything, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.